All right, so Latin America. In Latin America, we're having this continued issue over social status and political power. Remember that Latin American society is divided up into key classes according to your birth and your racial heritage. There are the Peninsulares, who are individuals who are born on the Iberian Peninsula, so either um, Spanish or Portuguese, and they happen to be living in the Americas. They operate the very top tiers of government. So they are your treasurers, they are your governors, etc. So they're the ones who have the most political power. Now, underneath them, you have the Creoles. Creoles are individuals who are of definitely European ancestry, but they were specifically born in America, and that's a very key distinction. They really consider themselves to be really the natural rulers of Latin America because they are descended from the conquistadors. They are descended from the individuals who came, the Europeans who came here first and really began settling Latin America. So there's some resentment against the Creoles to the Peninsulares. And then you have the other groups. You have the mestizos, those individuals who are of mixed Indian and European heritage. Sometimes a mestizo, depending on their family, particularly the relationship with the father, might be promoted up to Creole class, but it's pretty rare. Then, of course, you have the full blooded Indians, Africans, and of course, any combination thereof. And they do classify them. So the Creoles very much want to move up. And basically, the Napoleonic Wars finally gives them a reason to declare independence and get away with it. They aren't declaring a revolution against the Spanish king, but rather when Napoleon invades Portugal and invades Spain, they're declaring a revolution against that sort of foreign government. And that's specifically happening in Spain. Now, generally, Creoles are terrified by uprisings of the masses, particularly like Father Hidalgo, who led a native uprising. So they're really going to be doing their best to try and control the masses so everything goes the way the Creoles want to do. Generally, these revolutions occur a lot easier in the countryside, the frontier states, rather than some of the more central states, like Peru, like Bolivia, like Colombia, or like Mexico. Um, it's just a lot easier in the frontier states where a lot of the relationships are a little bit more loose. And yet, the Creoles are going to need the support of the lower classes if they want to succeed in the revolution, because they still have to contend with the armies of the Peninsulares. So the tool that they're going to use is called nativism. And there's this policy of glorifying an American identity. The fact that they, the mestizos, the Indians, and of course now the majority of the African slaves were born in America. And that American identity is defined by your birthplace. And so this is a way for them to connect with the lower classes and sort of cut the Peninsulares out. And so they're going to be using this in an effort for national unity. Now, some Creoles believe this idea of national unity more than others. A number of them are going to just be using it for political expediency. But you do see others who are definitely going to try and use this as a way to create a new Latin American state, like Simon Bolivar, the liberator. He very much wants to create a United States of Latin America. And he's known as a major military hero in Peru and Bolivia, or what's eventually going to be known as Bolivia. But he's going to end up calling Latin America ungovernable. There are very few Creoles who want to extend rights to the mestizos, the blacks, and the Indians. There's considerable separation and difficulty of communication between the countryside and the cities, very different political ideas, and Latin America is going to be economically devastated. Now, on the other hand, political independence is actually going to come very easy to Brazil. because the Portuguese monarchy is very, very savvily watching what's going on. Unlike the Spanish monarchy, which did not flee Spain and was put into prison, the Portuguese court actually ends up going all the way to Brazil until the Napoleonic Wars basically blow over. And when they get there, when they get to Rio de Janeiro, they are overwhelmingly welcomed by the Brazilian population. For the king to come, it's very much a step of recognition of that Brazil isn't just a colony. Maybe they can become a step equal into being an independent country, or at least on the same level of a country like Portugal. So the family actually does very well until the Portuguese parliament says, guys, Napoleon's been gone for a couple of years now, get back over here. So the king says, okay, fine. Most of the family's coming back, most of the court is going back, but he's leaving the crown prince. Just, stay here, govern our interest. Now, when the king leaves, he speaks to his son, basically lays out what he thinks is going to happen once the Portuguese monarchy leaves. He basically says, okay, look, we've already seen what's happening in the rest of Latin America. There's probably a very strong indication that the Brazilian Creoles are going to want a similar revolution, that they are going to want independence or become equal with Portugal. So, you need to play your hand the right way. Give in a little bit, but not so much that Brazil becomes entirely independent of Portuguese interests. And son says, okay, got it, see you later. So, when the Brazilian Creoles begin demanding independence, begin demanding nativism and an independent government and constitution, the prince basically says, you know what, I agree with you. Brazil has been so good to the family, we love it. There's no reason why Brazil should continue to be a colony. Brazil is going to become an equal country with Portugal. Now, there is independence in a way, and yet they are going to retain that special relationship with Portugal. And yet Brazil, very much in how it played with the rest of Latin America, although there is independence, there is not necessarily a major expansion of rights. So let's take a look at Haiti, because Haiti might actually be the most successful revolution of all that we're looking at, specifically because of the players involved. Now, Haiti is one of the most profitable colonies of France. It's a major area for sugar plantations. And really, they're getting their independence by taking advantage of the turmoil in the French Revolution. Now, the white community, they're looking at what's going on in France, and they say, you know what, maybe we too can gain our independence and have an independent Haiti that is ruled by ourselves, and that would be really economically profitable for us. But there's also different levels in Haitian society. You have the free whites, obviously. You have the black slaves, but you also have a middle class. And these are the free blacks, or what's known as the gens de couleur. The gens de couleur want more rights after they've been exposed to fighting in the American Revolution. They're not necessarily planned to include the slaves, and you really only see that unity between the African slaves and the gens de couleur after unified opposition by the white community. The reason why I say this might be the only successful revolution is because, A, it is the first successful slave rebellion. The white population, although this is definitely very terrifying, very bloody, they either flee to Louisiana, to Georgia, back to France, or they're obviously killed. But this is going to be an independent black nation that's not an African, so it's almost identifiable as probably the first Western black nation. And you also have to think, how is this going to affect the West's perception of slavery? Because the gens de couleur, like Toussaint Louverture, very,